My husband left me an old cabin in the forest, but our daughter inherited the mansion. She called me a parasite and forbade me from visiting the grandchildren. Desperate, I went to the abandoned cabin. But when I opened the basement door, I couldn't believe what I found. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from. The lawyer's voice had been clinical when he read Gerald's will. Emotionless. As if he were reciting a grocery list rather than dismantling my life. To my daughter, Victoria Montgomery, I bequeath the family estate at 1847 Ashwood Manor, including all furnishings, land holdings, and associated properties. Victoria had smiled then, not warmly, the way a cat smiles at a cornered mouse. To my wife, Harper Sullivan, I leave the property located at rural Route 7, Cascade County, Oregon, the cabin known locally as Thornwood Hollow. I remember the confusion that followed. The cabin? That decrepit structure Gerald's father built in the 1950s, buried so deep in the forest that even hunters avoided it. I hadn't set foot there in 40 years. Gerald himself had only mentioned it twice in our marriage, both times with a strange tension in his jaw that made me change the subject. "That's it?" Victoria had asked, her voice sharp as broken glass. "Mother gets a shack, and I get everything else?" The lawyer had cleared his throat. "There are additional provisions regarding financial accounts. But yes, those are the primary real estate bequests. I should have known then. Should have recognized the trap being laid. But grief makes fools of us all, and I was drowning in it. Gerald had been gone only 6 days. The funeral was barely over. I still found myself reaching for him in the middle of the night, my hand finding only cold sheets. That was 3 weeks ago. Now, standing in Victoria's pristine kitchen with its marble countertops and designer appliances, I wished I had stayed home. My small apartment, the one I'd moved into after the will reading because Victoria insisted the transition would be easier if I left immediately, suddenly seemed like a fortress I should never have left. "You can't seriously expect to see them whenever you want," Victoria said, her arms crossed over her silk blouse. Behind her, through the bay window, I could see my grandchildren playing in the yard. Brenda, 7, pushing Michael, 5, on the tire swing Gerald had installed 2 summers ago, before the cancer, before everything fell apart. "I'm their grandmother, Victoria. I just want to take them for ice cream, an hour, maybe 2. You're not stable right now, Mother." Victoria's husband, Preston, entered the kitchen, his footsteps silent on the expensive tile. He'd always moved like that, appearing suddenly, a shark in Armani. "Victoria and I have been discussing this. The children need consistency, routine, not—" He gestured vaguely at me, as if I were a stain on the furniture. Emotional upheaval from someone who's clearly not coping well. "Not coping well?" The words came out sharper than I intended. "I lost my husband. And we lost our father," Victoria snapped. "But you don't see us falling apart. Honestly, Mother, you've become a burden. Always calling, always showing up unannounced. Preston's right. It's not healthy for the children." The word hung between us like poison gas. Burden. I'd changed Victoria's diapers, sat up through countless nights when she had croup, paid for her college education by working double shifts at the hospital, held her hand through her miscarriage before Brenda was born. And now I was a burden. "I think you should leave," Preston said, his voice carrying that particular tone men use when they expect immediate obedience. "We'll call you if we think a visit is appropriate. Don't bother coming back unannounced," Victoria added. "I've already spoken to the security company. They have your photo. If you show up without permission, they'll call the police." I left. What else could I do? But as I drove away from Ashwood Manor, the house where I'd raised Victoria, where Gerald and I had celebrated 43 anniversaries, I caught sight of Brenda's face pressed against her bedroom window. She was crying. That image haunted me for 3 days. 3 days of sitting in my cramped apartment, staring at the walls, wondering how my life had dissolved so completely. 3 days of Victoria ignoring my calls. 3 days of asking myself what I'd done to deserve this exile from my own family. On the 4th day, I remembered the cabin. The deed had arrived in the mail, forwarded from Ashwood Manor with no note from Victoria, just the legal documents and a single key on a tarnished brass ring. The key was old, the kind with an ornate bow that belonged to another era, Gerald's father's era. I held it up to the light in my apartment, turning it slowly. Why had Gerald left me the cabin? He'd had the entire estate to divide, yet he'd specified that particular property for me. Not our shared savings. Victoria had contested those claims immediately, tying everything up in legal proceedings. Not the valuable antiques or Gerald's coin collection. Just an abandoned cabin I barely remembered. Unless. The thought arrived fully formed, the way crucial realizations often do. Unless Gerald had wanted me to go there. Unless there was something at Thornwood Hollow he'd meant for me to find. I was probably being foolish. Grief does strange things to the mind, creates patterns where none exist. But what did I have to lose? Victoria had made it clear I was unwelcome in her life. My friends had scattered after Gerald's death. I'd learned quickly that couples' friendships don't survive widowhood. I had nothing but time and a growing sense that I'd been maneuvered into a corner I didn't yet understand. The drive to Cascade County took 4 hours. I stopped once for gas and coffee, then again because I missed the turnoff. The road to Thornwood Hollow wasn't marked on my GPS, and the hand-drawn map the county clerk's office had provided was 60 years old. Rural Route 7 was barely a road at all. More of a suggestion, 2 tire tracks separated by overgrown weeds, winding deeper into the forest. Douglas firs pressed close on both sides, their branches forming a canopy that blocked out the October sun. The temperature dropped 10 degrees within the first mile. I almost turned back twice. The rental car, my own vehicle, had developed transmission problems I couldn't afford to fix, scraped bottom on hidden rocks. Branches screeched against the paint. Everything about this journey screamed mistake. Then the trees opened up, and there it was, Thornwood Hollow. Calling it a cabin was generous. It was barely larger than my apartment, a single-story structure of weathered pine logs gone gray with age. The roof sagged in the middle. Windows, dark and empty, stared out like dead eyes. The porch had collapsed on one side, creating a lurching, unstable entrance that looked like it might swallow anyone foolish enough to approach. I sat in the car for 10 minutes, engine running, heat on high, trying to understand what Gerald had been thinking. This wasn't a gift. It was an insult. Victoria got the mansion, and I got this nightmare. Maybe Preston was right. Maybe I wasn't coping well. Maybe grief had driven me to see conspiracies where there was only my husband's final dismissal. But I'd driven 4 hours, and the key was in my hand, its weight somehow significant. I turned off the engine. The silence was immediate and absolute. No traffic sounds, no distant voices, just wind moving through the trees and the tick of the cooling engine. I'd grown up in Portland, lived my entire adult life in suburbs. This level of isolation felt alien, threatening. The porch groaned under my weight, but held. The front door's lock was stiff, rusted from decades of disuse. I had to put my shoulder against the wood and turn the key with both hands before something inside gave way with a shriek of protesting metal. The interior was worse than the exterior. Dust covered everything in a thick gray blanket. Furniture, ancient, mismatched pieces that must have dated from the cabin's construction, sat in shadowed corners like waiting corpses. The air tasted of mold and mouse droppings. Water damage stained the ceiling in spreading brown patterns that suggested multiple roof leaks. But the structure was sound. That surprised me. Despite its appearance, the floor didn't sag. The walls stood straight. Someone, Gerald's father presumably, had built this place to last. I moved through the cabin slowly, my footsteps leaving tracks in the dust. 2 small bedrooms, a bathroom with rust-stained fixtures, a kitchen where a 1950s-era refrigerator stood silent and dark. Everything felt frozen in time, preserved exactly as it had been left. In the larger bedroom, I found a dresser with 3 drawers. The first 2 were empty, except for mouse nests and disintegrating newspapers. The third stuck, swollen with moisture. I had to yank hard to open it. Inside was a photograph. I recognized Gerald immediately, though he couldn't have been more than 25 in the picture. He stood in front of this very cabin, his arm around a woman I didn't recognize. She was beautiful. Dark hair, bright smile, looking at Gerald with unmistakable adoration. I'd seen every photograph from Gerald's youth. His mother had kept meticulous albums, and I'd spent hours going through them after we married, learning his history. But this woman had never appeared. Not once. I turned the photograph over. On the back, in Gerald's handwriting, Thornwood Hollow, summer 1978. Forever, 1978. 2 years before Gerald and I met. My hands were shaking when I set the photograph on the dresser. This meant nothing. Everyone had a past. Gerald had dated before me. He'd never hidden that. The fact that this particular woman wasn't in the family albums didn't mean anything sinister. Except Gerald had left me this cabin. This specific place where he'd been photographed with this specific woman. And he'd written forever on the back of the picture. I left the bedroom quickly, suddenly desperate for fresh air. The cabin felt oppressive now, its silence menacing rather than peaceful. I needed to leave, to drive back to my apartment and forget this entire foolish expedition. Then I saw the basement door. It was almost invisible, built flush with the wall beneath the stairwell to nowhere. The cabin was single-story, but someone had framed a staircase that stopped at the ceiling, an architectural oddity that made no sense. The door was painted the same color as the wall, no handle visible, just a keyhole set into the wood at waist height. I wouldn't have noticed it at all if my panicked retreat hadn't sent me stumbling against the wall. My hand hit the door and it moved slightly, revealing the hidden seam. My heart was racing now, adrenaline flooding my system. The key was still in my hand. I'd never released it after opening the front door. Don't, some rational part of my brain whispered. Leave now. Whatever's down there has been hidden for decades. Gerald's dead. His secrets died with him. You don't need to know. But I did need to know. Because Victoria's cruelty hadn't appeared from nowhere. Because Gerald's will had been deliberately strange. Because I'd spent 43 years with a man, and if I'd never truly known him, I needed to understand why. The key fit the basement lock perfectly. The door swung open on hinges that, despite their age, moved soundlessly. Someone had maintained them. Recently. Stone steps led down into darkness. Cold air rose from below, carrying a smell that wasn't quite mold, wasn't quite earth, something else. Something that made the hair on my arms stand up. I found a light switch at the top of the stairs, flicked it up, expecting nothing. Light flooded the basement, and I saw what Gerald had hidden for 45 years. The basement was enormous, far larger than the cabin above. It had been excavated deep into the hillside, the walls reinforced with concrete, the ceiling high enough for me to stand upright. Professional work, expensive work. But that wasn't what made my breath catch. The walls were covered with photographs, hundreds of them, tacked to corkboards that ran the entire perimeter of the space. The woman from the bedroom photograph appeared in most of them, always smiling, always with Gerald. But there were others too. Newspaper clippings, maps, documents with official seals. And in the center of the room sat a desk. On it, arranged in neat stacks, were file folders. Dozens of them, each labeled with a date. I moved closer, my legs unsteady, and opened the first folder. It was a dossier, complete with photographs, addresses, daily routines. A woman named Linda Mitchell, age 24 in the photos. Last seen August 15, 1978, the same summer as Gerald's photograph. My hands were numb when I opened the second folder. Another woman, Rebecca Simmons, age 27. Last seen June 3, 1979. The third folder, Jennifer Rawlings, age 25. Last seen April 18, 1980. I opened 6 more folders. All in their 20s. 9 women total. All marked last seen between 1978 and 1983. The year Gerald and I married was 1980. I was standing in a serial killer's archive, and my husband, my gentle, kind husband who'd held my hand through 43 years of marriage, had built it. The implications crashed over me like a physical blow. I grabbed the desk for support, my vision tunneling. This couldn't be real. Gerald had been an accountant, a father. He'd coached Victoria's softball team. He'd cried at our daughter's wedding. He'd spent his final days apologizing for leaving me alone. But the evidence surrounded me. Undeniable, methodically documented, How many people knew? Had Victoria known? Is that why she'd turned on me so viciously? Because she understood what Gerald had done, and I was tainted by association? I had to call the police. Right now. This instant. I was reaching for my phone when I heard it. A car engine. Coming up rural Route 7. Getting closer. Someone else knew about Thornwood Hollow, and they were coming for what Gerald had left behind. I froze. Every muscle locked. The engine sound grew louder, tires crunching over the rough road. Through the small basement window, ground level outside, near the ceiling down here, I could see dust rising through the trees. My phone. I needed to call 911, but my hands wouldn't cooperate, fumbling the device as I tried to unlock it. No signal. Of course, there was no signal. I was in the middle of nowhere, in a dead man's secret chamber, surrounded by evidence of crimes that might have destroyed lives decades ago. The engine cut off. A car door slammed. Footsteps on the porch. I did the only thing my panicked brain could conceive. I grabbed 3 of the folders, shoved them inside my jacket, and ran for the stairs. My feet hammered against the stone steps. I hit the light switch, plunging the basement into darkness, and pulled the door shut just as I heard the front door open. "Hello? Mrs. Sullivan? Are you here?" A woman's voice. Professional. Controlled. Not Victoria, thank God, but not friendly either. I emerged from behind the stairwell, my heart threatening to burst through my chest. Standing in the doorway was a woman in her mid-40s, wearing a gray pantsuit and carrying a leather briefcase. Her hair was pulled back severely, and her eyes, cold, assessing, swept the cabin's interior before settling on me. "Mrs. Sullivan, I'm glad I caught you." She stepped inside without invitation, her heels clicking on the wooden floor. "I'm Christine Valdez. I represent the Cascade County Historical Preservation Society." What? My voice came out as a croak. "The Historical Society. We've been trying to reach you for weeks." She set her briefcase on the dusty table, snapped it open with practiced efficiency. "Your late husband's property, this cabin, sits on land that we've been surveying for potential heritage designation. There are certain easements and access rights we need to discuss." She was lying. I knew it with absolute certainty. No historical society would hunt down a widow this aggressively. No preservation survey would require entering private property unannounced. And her eyes, they kept flicking toward the wall where the basement door was hidden, as if she knew exactly what lay behind it. "How did you know I was here?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "We've been monitoring the property." Christine pulled out a stack of documents, laid them on the table. "The access road triggers an alert when vehicles pass. Standard procedure for protected sites. Now, if you'll just sign these preliminary documents, I need to see identification first." Her smile tightened. "Of course." She reached into her jacket, and for one terrible moment I thought she was pulling a weapon, but it was just a wallet, flipped open to show an official-looking ID card. Christine Valdez, Cascade County Historical Preservation Society. The photo matched. The seal looked authentic, but something was wrong. The way she held herself, the way her eyes kept returning to that wall. She wasn't here about historical preservation. She was here for what Gerald had hidden. "Mrs. Sullivan, I understand you're grieving, but this property has been abandoned for decades. There are environmental concerns, structural issues. The society has the authority to—" "I'll need to have my lawyer review any documents." The lie came smoothly. I didn't have a lawyer. Victoria had the family attorney, and he'd made it clear he represented her interests now, not mine. But Christine didn't need to know that. Her expression hardened. "These are time-sensitive matters. If you refuse to cooperate, the county can pursue eminent domain proceedings. Then pursue them." I moved toward the door, forcing her to step aside. The folders inside my jacket felt like they were burning through the fabric. "I'm not signing anything today. Mrs. Sullivan." Her voice dropped, losing its professional veneer. "You don't understand what you're dealing with. This property has a complicated history. There are people who have a vested interest in seeing it properly managed. People who won't appreciate your interference." There it was. The threat, barely disguised. "Are you threatening me?" "I'm warning you. Christine gathered her documents with sharp, angry movements. Your husband understood the delicate nature of this situation. He made certain arrangements, accommodations. If you insist on disrupting those arrangements, get out. We stared at each other. She was younger, stronger, probably armed if she was what I suspected. But I'd raised a daughter, buried a husband, and just discovered my entire marriage might have been built on lies. I was done being pushed around. Christine left without another word, her footsteps sharp as gunshots on the porch. I watched through the window as she drove away, her sedan disappearing into the trees. Only when the engine sound faded completely did I allow myself to breathe. My hands were shaking violently when I pulled out the folders. I'd grabbed them randomly, but now I spread them on the table, forcing myself to look at what Gerald had documented. Linda Mitchell, the first woman, the one from the summer of 1978. Her file was the thickest, filled with photographs that tracked her movements over weeks. Grocery store, library, coffee shop, always alone. Always smiling at Gerald's camera, though the later photos suggested she didn't know she was being photographed anymore. The final photograph showed her standing beside a blue sedan. The last page in her file was a newspaper clipping, yellowed with age. Local woman vanishes without trace. Search continues for Linda Mitchell, 24. I felt bile rising in my throat. The second folder belonged to Rebecca Simmons. Same pattern. Weeks of photographs. Daily routines documented. Then nothing. Just another newspaper clipping about a disappearance that had never been solved. The third folder was different. Jennifer Rawlings, age 25. But this file contained more than photographs. It had letters, dozens of them, handwritten on pale blue stationery, all addressed to Gerald at a P.O. box in Portland. My darling. The first letter began. I've never felt this way about anyone. When I'm with you, the world makes sense. You're the only person who truly understands me. They were love letters. Passionate, intimate, detailing a relationship that had lasted months. Jennifer had been in love with Gerald. Deeply, completely in love. The final letter was dated April 15, 1980, 3 days before she vanished. I know you're scared, she'd written. I know you think I'm too young, that people won't understand. But I don't care what they think. Run away with me. We can start over somewhere no one knows us. We can be free. Gerald had married me on June 20th, 1980, 2 months after Jennifer Rawlings disappeared. I was going to be sick. I barely made it to the porch before vomiting into the weeds. My entire body was shaking, cold sweat drenching my clothes despite the afternoon chill. The man I'd loved, the man I'd built a life with, had been... What? A murderer? Had he killed these women? Or was something else happening here? I forced myself back inside, forced myself to think. Christine Valdez had known about the cabin's contents. She'd known about Gerald's arrangements. She'd threatened me when I refused to cooperate. That meant others were involved. Others who'd protected Gerald's secret for decades. But why? Why maintain a serial killer's archive? Why not destroy the evidence? Unless it wasn't about protection. Unless someone was using this evidence. Blackmail, maybe. Or leverage. Gerald had been an accountant. He'd had access to sensitive financial information for dozens of wealthy clients. If someone had discovered his secret, they could have controlled him for years. My phone buzzed, making me jump. A text message from Victoria. Mother, I've been informed you're harassing county officials. This behavior needs to stop. Preston is consulting with our attorney about your mental competency. For your own good. I stared at the message, understanding blooming like poison flowers. Victoria knew. Maybe not everything, but enough. Enough to want me isolated, discredited, unable to expose whatever her father had done. How long had she known? Since childhood? Since Gerald's diagnosis? Or had she discovered the truth recently and decided to protect the family reputation at my expense? Another text. Do not contact us again. Do not come to the house. If you persist, we will pursue legal action for harassment and elder exploitation. Elder exploitation. They were going to paint me as the unstable widow, delusional and potentially dangerous. If I went to the police with what I'd found, Victoria and Preston could claim I was fabricating evidence. that grief had unbalanced my mind. I needed proof. Not just the folders. Those could be dismissed as my husband's morbid hobby, true crime obsession, anything. I needed something that connected Gerald to the actual crimes. Something that would force the police to investigate despite Victoria's influence. The basement. There had to be more down there. Evidence I'd missed in my panic. I descended the stairs again, turned on the light, and began searching systematically. The desk drawers first. More files, more photographs, a calendar marking dates with red X's that corresponded to the disappearances. A lockbox, which I couldn't open. A leather journal. But when I opened it, the pages were blank. No, not blank. Indented. Someone had written in the journal, then torn out the pages. But the pressure of the pen had left impressions on the sheets below. I held the journal up to the light, tilting it at different angles. Words appeared in shadow. Can't continue. Too dangerous, she suspects. I needed a pencil to do a proper rubbing, but I didn't have one. What I had was my phone. I took photos of each page, using different angles and lighting, hoping to capture the impressions well enough to read them later. That's when I heard the sound. Upstairs. In the cabin. Footsteps. Multiple sets. They'd come back. And this time, they'd brought reinforcements. I killed the light, pressed myself against the cold concrete wall. The basement door opened. Light spilled down the stairs. I held my breath, praying the darkness would hide me. She was here. A man's voice. Unfamiliar. Valdez said she took some files. Then we search until we find them. Another man. Older, with an accent I couldn't place. Check everything. The car, her purse, her pockets if necessary. What about her? Accidents happen in old buildings. Structural collapse. Tragic, really, but unavoidable. They were going to kill me. And make it look like the cabin had simply given way beneath an old woman's weight. The basement had no other exit. I knew that with sickening certainty. I'd already surveyed the space. One staircase, one way out, and two men were standing at the top of it planning my murder. Think, Harper. Think. My eyes adjusted to the darkness. The window, the small ground-level window I'd noticed earlier. It was narrow, probably too narrow for most adults. But I was small, 69 years old, and barely 110 pounds after months of grief-induced weight loss. If I could reach it, if I could squeeze through. Footsteps descended the stairs. A flashlight beam swept across the basement, and I pressed myself flatter against the wall, behind a filing cabinet I hadn't noticed before. The beam passed inches from my hiding spot. Lights don't work, the younger man called up. Circuit must be dead. Then use your eyes. She couldn't have gone far. The beam moved methodically across the room. In seconds, he'd find me. I had maybe 10 seconds before the light reached my corner. I did the only thing I could think of. I grabbed one of the folders from inside my jacket and threw it as hard as I could toward the opposite corner of the basement. The folder hit the concrete wall with a slap. The flashlight beam whipped toward the sound. "There's something back here," the younger man said, moving toward the noise. I didn't wait. I ran, as quietly as possible, but speed mattered more than silence now, toward the window. My hands found the frame. It was latched from the inside. A simple metal catch rusted nearly solid. I pulled with strength I didn't know I possessed, and the catch gave way with a screech that seemed deafening in the confined space. "She's at the window!" The flashlight beam found me. I was already pushing the window open, shoving my arms through, pulling myself up. The opening was impossibly small. My shoulders caught. For one terrible moment, I thought I was stuck, trapped halfway through while they closed in behind me. Then something in my jacket tore, and I scraped through, tumbling onto the dirt outside. I scrambled to my feet, ignoring the pain in my ribs, and ran. The forest swallowed me immediately. Douglas firs thick as pillars, underbrush that clawed at my legs, failing light that turned everything into shadows. I had no idea where I was going. Away from the cabin, away from those men. That was all that mattered. Behind me, I heard shouting. The cabin door banging open. More voices. They'd brought at least 3 people, maybe more. "Find her! She can't have gone far!" I ran until my lungs burned, until my legs threatened to give out. Then I found a hollow beneath a fallen tree and crawled inside, pressing myself into the damp earth, trying to silence my ragged breathing. Flashlight beams swept through the trees. The search party fanned out, systematic and organized. These weren't amateurs. They moved like professionals, like people who'd tracked targets through forests before. "Mrs. Sullivan!" Christine Valdez's voice, saccharine sweet. "Please come back. There's been a terrible misunderstanding. We only want to talk." I stayed silent, curled in my hiding spot, praying they'd move past me. They nearly did. The flashlight beams moved away, voices fading. I waited 10 minutes, then 15, until I could no longer hear them. Only then did I ease myself out of the hollow, every muscle screaming protest. I still had one of the folders. I'd lost one in the basement, thrown another as a distraction, but one remained tucked inside what was left of my jacket. My phone had survived the window escape, though the screen was cracked. Still no signal, but it would work once I reached civilization. If I reached civilization. I had no idea which direction led back to the access road where I'd left the rental car. The forest looked identical in every direction, and dusk was settling fast. Soon it would be full dark, and I'd be lost completely. Then I saw it. A reflection through the trees. Water. A stream or creek, running generally downhill. Water meant civilization eventually. People built towns near water sources. If I followed it long enough, I'd find a road, a house, someone who could help. I walked for what felt like hours, but was probably only 45 minutes. The creek widened into a stream, then narrowed again, winding through terrain that grew increasingly rough. My feet, in shoes meant for city sidewalks not forest hiking, were blistered and bloody. My ribs ached where I'd scraped through the window, but I kept moving, because stopping meant thinking about what I'd discovered, and thinking about it meant confronting truths I wasn't ready to face. Full darkness fell. The temperature dropped. I was shivering constantly now, my torn jacket providing little protection against the October night. I was about to admit defeat, to find another hiding spot and wait for dawn, when I saw lights ahead. A house. Small, isolated, but a house. Lights in the windows. A pickup truck in the driveway. I approached cautiously, watching for any sign that Christine and her people had gotten here first, but the house looked peaceful, ordinary. A television flickered through curtained windows. Someone was home, living a normal evening, unaware that a desperate woman was about to shatter their peace. I knocked on the door. It opened immediately, and I found myself face to face with a man in his 70s, barrel-chested and suspicious. "Help you? Please," I gasped. "I need to use your phone." "Call the police. There are people. They tried to—" The words wouldn't come. I was shaking so hard my teeth chattered. The man's expression changed from suspicion to concern. "Jesus, come in, come in." He pulled me inside, called over his shoulder. "Martha, we got a situation here." A woman appeared from the kitchen, took one look at me, and sprang into action. Within minutes, I was wrapped in a blanket, sitting by a wood stove with a cup of hot tea in my hands. The man, he introduced himself as Frank Holloway, was on his landline with the county sheriff. That's right. Woman came to my door, scared half to death. Says people were chasing her near Thornwood Hollow. Pause. "Yeah, the old Sullivan place." That's what she said. Martha sat beside me, her face kind but worried. "What happened, honey?" I opened my mouth to explain, then stopped. What could I say? My dead husband might have been connected to multiple disappearances? A fake historical society was trying to kill me? I had evidence of crimes from 40 years ago hidden in my jacket? None of it sounded sane. Victoria's texts echoed in my mind. "Consulting with our attorney about your mental competency." If I told the truth, they'd think I was delusional. A grief-addled widow, seeing conspiracies everywhere. Christine and whoever she worked for would deny everything, produce credentials that checked out, suggest I'd become confused and paranoid in the dark forest. "I got lost," I said finally. "I was visiting the cabin. It was left to me by my late husband, and I went for a walk. Lost track of time. Couldn't find my way back in the dark. It was weak, but it was believable." Martha patted my hand sympathetically. Frank hung up the phone. Sheriff's sending a deputy. 40 minutes out. We're pretty remote here. You want me to drive you back to the cabin? Get your car? No. The word came out too sharp. I softened my tone. No, thank you. I'd rather wait for the deputy. I'm not sure I could find the cabin again in the dark anyway. Frank nodded slowly, his eyes sharp despite his folksy manner. He knew I wasn't telling him everything, but he didn't push. Small-town courtesy, maybe, or wisdom born from years of knowing when to mind his own business. Martha made sandwiches while we waited. I forced myself to eat, knowing I'd need strength for what came next. The folders inside my jacket felt like they were burning through the fabric, but I couldn't examine them here. Not with Frank and Martha watching. The deputy arrived in 35 minutes. A young woman named Rahal, who looked too fresh-faced to handle small-town emergencies. She took my statement, the sanitized version about getting lost, with careful notes and professional concern. We'll drive you back to your vehicle, Mrs. Sullivan. Make sure you get on the road safely. You shouldn't be out here alone this late. In the patrol car, with Rahal driving and Frank's house receding behind us, I finally felt safe enough to think, to process what had happened. Gerald had kept files on 9 women who'd disappeared. But the love letters from Jennifer Rawlings suggested something more complex than simple predation. She'd loved him, wanted to run away with him. That didn't fit the pattern of a serial killer stalking victims. What if Gerald hadn't killed these women? What if he'd documented their disappearances because he was investigating them? Or, and this thought sent ice through my veins, what if he'd helped them disappear? The timeline was suggestive. Linda Mitchell vanished in 1978. The same summer, Gerald was photographed with her at Thornwood Hollow. Jennifer Rawlings disappeared in April 1980, months before Gerald married me. What if these women hadn't died? What if Gerald had been running some kind of underground railroad, helping women escape dangerous situations? But that didn't explain Christine Valdez. Didn't explain the men who'd planned to kill me. If Gerald had been helping people, why would anyone want to silence me for discovering it? Unless some of the women hadn't wanted to disappear. Unless Gerald's help had become coercion. Or unless someone else had been involved, and Gerald's files were evidence that could expose them. Rahal pulled up next to my rental car, still parked on the access road. Looks untampered, she said, shining her flashlight over it. You sure you're okay to drive? You've had quite a shock. I'll be fine. I wouldn't be fine. I'd never be fine again. But I needed to get away from here, back to somewhere with cell service, where I could think without fear of ambush. Take care, Mrs. Sullivan. And maybe next time, visit the cabin during daylight hours. These old logging roads aren't safe after dark. I promised I would, knowing I'd never come back to Thornwood Hollow. Whatever secrets it held would stay buried. I was wrong about that. I'd driven maybe 10 miles when headlights appeared in my rearview mirror, following close, too close. The vehicle behind me accelerated, and I realized with sickening certainty that they'd been waiting, watching, letting the deputy leave before making their move. They rammed me from behind, and my rental car skidded toward the ditch. I fought the wheel, fighting against decades of muscle memory that screamed to hit the brakes. Braking would send me spinning. Instead, I accelerated into the skid, straightening out just before the shoulder dropped away into darkness. The rental car fishtailed, tires screaming, but stayed on the road. The vehicle behind me, a black SUV, windows tinted, accelerated again. This time I was ready. As it closed the distance, I tapped my brakes, just enough to make my brake lights flare. The SUV driver reacted instinctively, slowing. I punched the accelerator and gained precious yards, but I was driving a economy rental against what looked like a luxury vehicle with 3 times the horsepower. This wasn't a chase I could win through speed. I needed to be smarter. The road ahead curved sharply. I knew this from the drive-in, a hairpin turn where the logging road switched back on itself. I slowed as if preparing to navigate it carefully, watching the SUV close the gap again. At the last possible second, I yanked the wheel hard right, not following the curve but cutting across the shoulder onto what looked like an abandoned fire road. The rental car bounced violently over ruts and rocks. Behind me, the SUV overshot the turn. I heard brakes squealing, saw headlights sweeping wildly as the driver fought to recover. The fire road was barely passable, more suggestion than reality. Branches scraped both sides of the car with sounds like fingernails on a chalkboard. I had no idea where this path led. Deeper into the forest, probably. Maybe to a dead end where they'd trap me. But it bought me time. And time was all I had. My phone, wedged in the cup holder, suddenly chimed. Signal. 2 bars. I grabbed it, nearly drove into a tree, corrected course with one hand while unlocking the phone with the other. Called 911. 911, what's your emergency? I'm being chased. The words tumbled out. Someone's trying to run me off the road. I looked around frantically. No landmarks, nothing but trees and darkness. I'm on a fire road off rural Route 7 near Thornwood Hollow. Please send help. Ma'am, I need you to stay calm. Can you describe the vehicle pursuing you? Black SUV, tinted windows. They rammed me twice. They're trying to kill me. Are you injured? Do you need medical assistance? Behind me, headlights appeared. The SUV had found the fire road. They're coming. Please, just send someone. Units are being dispatched to your location. Stay on the line with me. Do not engage with the other vehicle. If possible, drive to a public location. The fire road ended. Not gradually. Not with warning signs. It simply stopped, opening onto a rocky clearing that dropped away on 3 sides. A dead end. Exactly what I'd feared. I slammed the brakes, and the rental car skidded to a stop inches from the edge. Below, maybe 30 feet down, I could see the reflection of moonlight on water. A ravine. If I'd been going faster, I'd have driven straight over. The SUV's headlights appeared behind me, moving slow now. Confident. They had me trapped. I was still on the line with 911. They've got me cornered, I said, surprised by how calm my voice sounded. If something happens to me, tell them to check Thornwood Hollow, the cabin basement. There's evidence there. Tell them Gerald Sullivan. The line went dead. No signal. Of course. The SUV stopped 20 feet away, engine idling. No one got out. They just sat there, waiting. The headlights were blinding, turning me into a silhouette. I couldn't see how many people were inside. Couldn't see their faces. Then the driver's door opened. Christine Valdez stepped out, and this time she wasn't pretending to be a historical society representative. She was wearing tactical gear, black pants, boots, a jacket that could have hidden any number of weapons. 2 men emerged from the passenger side. I recognized one from his voice, the younger man from the cabin. The other was older, silver-haired, with the bearing of someone accustomed to command. Mrs. Sullivan. Christine approached slowly, hands visible and empty. You've caused us considerable trouble today. Stay back. I grabbed the only thing within reach, a flashlight from the rental car's glove box. As weapons went, it was pathetic. But it was something. We're not going to hurt you. Christine stopped 10 feet away. We just need those files you took. Return them, and this all ends peacefully. Like it ended peacefully in the cabin? When you were planning to stage my death? That was a misunderstanding. My associates were overzealous. I apologize. Apologize? Hysteria bubbled up in my throat. You hunted me through the forest. You ran me off the road. Necessary escalation. You wouldn't cooperate. Christine's voice remained infuriatingly calm. Mrs. Sullivan, Harper, you don't understand what you've stumbled into. Those files aren't what you think. Your husband was protecting people. Important people. People who still need that protection. By documenting women's disappearances. By keeping love letters from women who vanished. By providing exit strategies for women who needed to escape. Christine took another step closer. Your husband wasn't a killer. He was a facilitator. He helped women in danger, women with violent partners, women trapped in criminal organizations, women who needed to disappear completely, create new identities, new lives. I stared at her. That's insane. Is it? Think about the timeline. 1978 through 1983. Do you know what else was happening then? The FBI's witness protection program was getting exposed in the press. Leaks, compromises. People who needed protection couldn't trust official channels. So unofficial networks formed. Your husband was part of one such network. Then why hide it? Why threaten me? Because the women he helped are still out there, Harper, living under assumed names, raising families, building new lives. If those files become public, if their real identities are exposed, they're all in danger. The people they ran from, abusive spouses, criminal associates, corrupt officials, some of them are still looking, still waiting. It almost made sense. Almost. But something was wrong with the picture Christine was painting. The love letters, I said. Jennifer Rawlings wrote about running away with Gerald, about being in love with him. That's not professional facilitation. Christine's expression flickered. Just for a moment, but I saw it. Uncertainty. Or maybe annoyance that I'd noticed the inconvenient detail. Your husband was human, Harper. Sometimes lines got blurred. But it doesn't change the fundamental truth. He was trying to help people. We've continued that work. The network still exists, still protects vulnerable individuals. Those files are the only remaining record of their previous identities. We can't let them fall into the wrong hands. Then why didn't Gerald destroy them? Insurance? Leverage? Protection for himself? And Christine stopped abruptly, as if she'd said too much. Protection from whom? It's complicated. Uncomplicate it. The silver-haired man spoke for the first time, his voice carrying an accent I now recognized as Eastern European. We're wasting time. Take the files. Christine shot him a warning look. Ivan, we discussed... I don't care what we discussed. Ivan drew a gun from inside his jacket, not pointed at me. Not yet. Just held casually, a reminder of the power dynamic. The woman has what we need. We take it. Simple. My heart hammered against my ribs, but I forced myself to stay still. Running would accomplish nothing. I was trapped against a ravine with 3 people who'd already demonstrated willingness to use violence. The files aren't here, I said. Christine's eyes narrowed. You're lying. Am I? You chased me through the forest. Rammed my car. You think I kept them in my jacket? I hid them. Before I left Frank Holloway's house, I hid them where you'll never find them. It was a bluff. The files were still inside my jacket, pressed against my ribs. But they didn't know that. Where? Ivan stepped forward, gun now pointed in my direction. Shoot me, and you'll never know. We can search you, Christine said. Search the car. Search Holloway's property. You could, but you won't find them. And searching a citizen's property without cause? The deputy who drove me back to my car knows exactly where I've been tonight. If something happens to me, if Frank's house gets ransacked, she'll have questions. The kind of questions that bring more police, more attention, the exact thing you're trying to avoid. Christine and Yvonne exchanged glances. I'd struck a nerve. Whatever operation they were running, it depended on staying invisible. Official attention was their enemy. What do you want? Christine asked finally. Answers. Real answers. Starting with who else was involved. Because Gerald couldn't have run an escape network alone. He was an accountant, not a spy. Someone recruited him. Someone supplied him with false documents, money, safe houses. Who? That's not your concern. It became my concern when you tried to kill me. I was pushing my luck, but I had nothing left to lose. My daughter is involved too, isn't she? That's why Victoria turned on me so viciously. She knows about the network. She's protecting it. Christine said nothing, but her silence was confirmation. How long has she known? Since childhood? Or did Gerald tell her before he died? Your husband left very specific instructions, Christine said carefully. Victoria was designated as his successor. She inherited more than just the estate, Harper. She inherited his responsibilities, his obligations. The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. Gerald's will hadn't been about punishing me or favoring Victoria. It had been about protecting the network. Victoria got the mansion because the real value wasn't the property. It was access to Gerald's clients, his financial records, his position in the community. Everything needed to continue facilitating escapes for people who needed to disappear. And I got the cabin because it was the liability, the evidence, the thing that could destroy everything if it fell into the wrong hands. He was protecting her, I whispered. By keeping me ignorant, he was protecting me. If I didn't know, I couldn't be held responsible. Couldn't be targeted. Exactly, Christine said. Your husband loved you, Harper. He spent 43 years keeping you safe from this world. And then he died. And you couldn't leave well enough alone. He should have destroyed the files. He tried. At the end. But the cancer moved too fast. He didn't have time to properly dispose of everything. We've been working to contain the situation ever since. Ivan lowered his gun slightly. Enough talk. The files. Now. I had one card left to play. One gamble that might save my life or end it. I mailed copies. I lied. This afternoon, before I left Frank's house. Sent them to 3 different addresses with instructions to open them if anything happens to me. Bullshit, Ivan said. Try me. I met his eyes. You've already proven you're willing to kill for those files, so kill me. See what happens when 3 separate parties receive evidence of a 40-year conspiracy. The silence stretched. Somewhere in the forest, an owl called. The wind moved through the trees with a sound like whispered warnings. Christine pulled out her phone, stepped away, spoke in low tones to someone, calling her superior, probably, getting instructions. She returned with her expression carefully neutral. You're going to come with us. Voluntarily. We'll discuss this situation somewhere more secure. So you can make me disappear like the women in those files? So we can explain the full situation and reach an arrangement. You want to protect your daughter, don't you? Victoria has built a good life. She has children, a reputation. If this becomes public, she loses everything. There it was. The real threat. Not violence against me, but against Victoria. Against Brenda and Michael. My grandchildren, who I loved despite their mother's cruelty. What kind of arrangement? You return the files. All copies if they exist. You sign documents ensuring your silence. In exchange, we leave you alone. Victoria leaves you alone. You get supervised visitation with your grandchildren. Regular contact. That's what you want, isn't it? Family? It was everything I wanted. Everything I'd lost when Gerald died. But the price was complicity in whatever this network had done. Whatever crimes had been committed under the guise of helping people. I need time to think. You have 30 seconds. In the distance, I heard sirens. Faint, but growing closer. My 911 call had worked. Help was coming. Christine heard them too. Decide now, Harper. Come with us willingly, or we leave you here to explain to the police why you're making wild accusations about your dead husband. Who do you think they'll believe? The unstable widow whose daughter has already documented her declining mental state? Or the respectable historical society investigating property preservation? The sirens were getting louder. Deputy Rahal, probably, responding to my emergency call. In minutes, she'd find me here with Christine and her people. I could tell her everything, show her the files, demand investigation. But Christine was right. Without context, without proof beyond Gerald's disturbing documentation, I'd sound insane. And Victoria had already planted seeds of doubt about my competency. Preston had lawyers ready to have me declared mentally unfit. If I went with the police, I'd lose. If I went with Christine, I might survive long enough to understand the truth. Fine, I said. But I drive myself. I follow you. Any deviation from a public route, and I start screaming. Christine smiled. It didn't reach her eyes. Fair enough. The files? After we talk. After I hear the full story. Then I decide what to do with them. She didn't like it, but the sirens were close now. The Silver Pine Motel. Route 30, 15 miles east. Room 12. 1 hour. They got in their SUV and drove away, leaving me standing beside my battered rental car as Deputy Rahal's patrol vehicle appeared on the fire road. I had 1 hour to decide whether to trust criminals or face my family's destruction. And I still didn't know who was lying. Deputy Rahal bought my story about swerving to avoid a deer and ending up on the fire road by mistake. Why wouldn't she? I was exactly what I appeared to be. A 69-year-old widow, shaken and confused, grateful for rescue. She didn't see the predator I'd become over the past 12 hours. The woman who'd escaped killers, bluffed armed criminals, and was now driving toward a confrontation that would determine the rest of her life. The Silver Pine Motel was exactly what its name suggested. a rundown establishment catering to truckers and travelers too exhausted to care about cleanliness. I parked 3 spaces from room 12, positioned so I could see the door and highway simultaneously. Escape routes. Always have escape routes. My phone showed 11:47 p.m. I'd taken longer than an hour deliberately. Let them wait. Let them wonder if I'd gone to the police instead. Power dynamics mattered in negotiations, and I was done being the helpless victim. I pulled the folders from inside my jacket and photographed every page, uploaded them to a cloud storage account I created on the spot, then emailed the link to myself with a time-delayed send. If I didn't cancel it within 6 hours, the email would automatically forward to 3 news outlets. It wasn't the elaborate insurance policy I'd claimed, but it was something. Then I got out of the car and knocked on room 12. Christine answered immediately. She'd changed out of tactical gear into civilian clothes, jeans, a sweater, looking almost normal, almost trustworthy. Behind her, the room was sparse but occupied. Ivan sat at the small table, still radiating menace despite his relaxed posture. The younger man from the cabin stood by the window, watching the parking lot, and sitting on the bed, looking far less confident than I'd expected, was my daughter, Victoria. My voice came out flat, emotionless. Mother. She wouldn't meet my eyes. I'm sorry it came to this. Are you? I stepped inside, let Christine close the door. Sorry you called me a parasite? Sorry you banned me from seeing my grandchildren? Or sorry you're involved in whatever criminal conspiracy got your father killed? Dad died of cancer, Victoria said, but her voice wavered. Did he? Or did the stress of running an illegal operation for 40 years destroy his immune system? I turned to Christine. You said you'd explain everything. Start explaining. Christine gestured to a chair. I remained standing. Fine. Your husband was recruited in 1977 by an organization that helps people disappear. Not witness protection. Something more flexible, less official. We handle cases the government won't or can't touch. Domestic abuse victims whose partners have connections in law enforcement. Whistleblowers targeted by corporations. People trapped in criminal organizations who want out but can't go to the FBI without becoming targets themselves. And Gerald's role? Financial architecture. Creating paper trails for new identities. Establishing credit histories, employment records, tax documents. He was brilliant at it. Could build an entire person from nothing. The network paid him well, and for years, everyone benefited. Until? Christine hesitated. Ivan answered instead, his accent thick. Until your husband got sloppy. Fell in love with one of the clients, Jennifer Rawlings. Promised her things he couldn't deliver. She wanted him to leave you, run away with her. He refused. She threatened to expose the entire operation. The room seemed to tilt. What happened to her? She disappeared, Christine said quickly. Voluntarily. We relocated her, gave her a new identity, made sure she couldn't cause problems. She's alive, Harper. Living in Montana under a different name. Married, 2 kids. Happy. Then why keep the files? Why document everything if it was legitimate? Insurance, Victoria said quietly. After Jennifer, the organization didn't trust Dad anymore. They forced him to keep records, proof that he'd created these identities, proof that could implicate him if anything went wrong. It was leverage. They controlled him through blackmail for 25 years. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her, and saw the truth written in her face. The exhaustion, the fear. She wasn't protecting a noble cause. She was trapped in the same cage that had held Gerald. When did you find out? 6 months before Dad died. He told me everything. Said I needed to know because they'd come for me after he was gone. The organization doesn't let people just walk away. There's always a successor. Always someone to continue the work. And you agreed? What choice did I have? Victoria's voice cracked. They knew everything about us. Our finances, our friends, Brenda's school, Michael's medical history. They said if I didn't cooperate, they'd destroy us. Make it look like Dad had been embezzling from clients. Preston would lose his medical license. The children would grow up with a grandfather remembered as a criminal. Christine stepped forward. This isn't personal, Harper. It's operational security. Gerald's death created a vulnerability. Those files, they're the only physical evidence linking the organization to specific identities. If they surface, we have dozens of people at risk, people who trusted us to keep them safe. Then destroy the files, I said. We tried. But Gerald encrypted the digital copies and hid them somewhere we haven't found. The basement files were supposed to be our backup. We needed them to verify the identities before we could safely purge the digital records. Now you've taken them, and we're stuck. I processed this, turning it over, looking for the lie. Because there had to be a lie. People didn't hunt me through forests and ram me off roads just to protect abuse victims. What aren't you telling me? Christine and Victoria exchanged glances. Ivan stood up, and suddenly, the room felt very small. Some of the people we relocated weren't victims, he said. Some were assets. People who knew too much about powerful individuals. Corporate whistleblowers who needed to disappear before testifying. Politicians' mistresses who threatened blackmail. The organization handles all kinds of disappearances, whoever pays. You're criminals. We're pragmatists. We help people who need helping and get paid well for it. Your husband understood that. Your daughter understands it. Now you need to understand it too. Or what? Ivan smiled without warmth. Or you disappear like Jennifer Rawlings. Except you won't get Montana and a happy ending. You'll get a cremation, a forged suicide note, and Victoria explaining to your grandchildren how grief drove their grandmother to desperate measures. The threat hung in the air, ugly and undeniable. Victoria stood up. Ivan, that's not... We agreed no threats. Your mother needs to understand the stakes. No, she needs to understand the truth. Victoria turned to me and I saw tears in her eyes. Mom, I'm not doing this because I want to. I'm doing it because they own me. Just like they owned Dad. Every identity he created. Every relocation he facilitated. They kept records. Proof of his involvement. Proof of mine now. If I refuse to cooperate, they release everything. Preston gets disbarred for conspiracy. I lose the children. We lose everything. Then we go to the police. Right now. Tell them everything. Christine laughed. And say what? That a dead man ran an illegal relocation service? That your daughter has been helping criminals disappear? You'd be confessing to crimes, Harper. Victoria would go to prison. The children would go into foster care. Is that what you want? I wanted to scream. To throw something, to wake up and discover this was all a nightmare, that Gerald was still alive, that my life hadn't been built on lies and coercion. But I'd lived 69 years. I knew that wanting and having were different things. What do you want from me? I asked. Join us, Christine said simply. Take your husband's place. You're intelligent, organized, and you understand how to keep secrets. You lived with Gerald for 43 years without suspecting. Those are valuable skills. I'm not helping you extort people. Then just stay silent. Return the files. Sign the non-disclosure agreement. Go back to your apartment and pretend none of this happened. We'll ensure Victoria treats you better. Regular visitation with the grandchildren, financial support, everything you've been missing. It was tempting. God, it was tempting. To go back to ignorance. To have my family back. To hold Brenda and Michael again. To stop being the enemy and become complicit instead. But I'd seen the files, knew the names. Linda Mitchell, Rebecca Simmons, Jennifer Rawlings, 6 others. 9 women whose lives had been erased, whose families probably still wondered what happened to them. Maybe some were happy in their new lives. Maybe some were victims of the very organization claiming to help them. I couldn't unknow what I knew. I need to think, I said. No more thinking. Yvonne pulled out his gun again. Decide now. Put that away, Victoria snapped. Mother, please, I'm begging you. Think about Brenda and Michael. Think about what happens to them if this goes wrong. That's when I realized the truth. The real truth, hidden beneath all the layers of deception. You're not trapped, I said to Victoria. You're a true believer. Her face went very still. Preston isn't being threatened. His medical license isn't at risk. You're not being blackmailed. You're being paid. The mansion, your lifestyle, that's not inheritance from your father's accounting practice. That's payment for services rendered. Mom, how much do they pay you to create false identities? To help people disappear? How much am I worth to you? Victoria's silence was answer enough. I'd come here hoping to find my daughter trapped and scared, forced into criminal activity against her will. Someone I could save. Instead, I'd found a woman who'd chosen this life. Who'd been chosen by Gerald not despite her nature but because of it. The cabin, I said slowly, working it out. Gerald didn't leave it to me as a gift. He left it to me as a test. He knew someone would try to recruit me after his death. He was giving me a choice. Join the organization or expose it. Christine nodded. Your husband was sentimental at the end. He wanted you to have agency, to choose your own path rather than being forced. We've honored that. This entire conversation is us giving you the choice he wanted you to have. Some choice. Join criminals or watch my family destroyed. Life is full of difficult choices, Harper. Your husband made his choice 45 years ago. Victoria made hers 6 months ago. Now it's your turn. I looked at my daughter. At the woman who'd called me a parasite. Who'd banned me from seeing my grandchildren. Who'd tried to have me declared mentally incompetent. All of it calculated. All of it designed to isolate me, to make me desperate enough to accept any offer of reconciliation. Gerald had taught her well. I need those files, Christine said. Where are they? I reached into my jacket slowly, pulled out the remaining folder, set them on the table. Christine grabbed them immediately, began checking the contents. These are only one file. There were 9 women. Where are the others? Basement. Still in the basement. I only grabbed these 3, threw one away during the chase, and gave one to Deputy Rahal for safekeeping. It was a lie, but it was a useful lie. Rahal? Ivan's voice was sharp. You gave a file to the deputy? As insurance. I told her if anything happened to me, she should look at it. By now, she's probably already examined it. Probably already wondering about Rebecca Simmons's disappearance. Probably already making calls. Christine's face went white. You're bluffing. Am I? Why don't you call her and ask? The room erupted into chaos. Ivan cursing in Russian. Christine on her phone, speaking rapidly to someone. Victoria staring at me with something that might have been horror, or might have been admiration. The truth was, I hadn't given Rahal anything. But they didn't know that. And the uncertainty was a weapon I could use. Here's my counteroffer, I said, voice cutting through the chaos. You leave me alone. Permanently. You allow me to see my grandchildren whenever I want. And you give Victoria a way out of this organization if she ever decides she wants one. Or, Christine asked, or I tell Deputy Rahal where to find the rest of the files. I tell her about Thornwood Hollow, about Gerald's basement, about everything. I burn this entire operation to the ground and accept whatever consequences come with it. Because I'm 69 years old, I've lost my husband, and I've discovered my daughter is a criminal. I've got nothing left to lose. The silence that followed was absolute. Then Victoria laughed. It started as a small sound, grew into something bigger, almost hysterical. She's bluffing, she said finally. She didn't give Rahal anything. Mom wouldn't risk exposing Dad's legacy, wouldn't risk the grandchildren's futures. She's bluffing, and you're all falling for it. She was right. I was bluffing. But Christine didn't know that. Ivan didn't know that. They were professionals, but they were also paranoid. That's how organizations like this survived. By assuming the worst, by eliminating threats before they materialized. Maybe I am bluffing, I said. Or maybe I'm a 69-year-old woman who's finally learned that sometimes you have to burn everything down to find out what's worth saving. Christine studied me for a long moment. Then she nodded to Ivan. Check with Rahal. Verify whether she has anything. Ivan made a call, spoke briefly, hung up. Rahal filed nothing unusual, no evidence logged. The woman's lying. Am I? I smiled. Or did Rahal just lie to you? How well do you really know the county sheriff's department? Are you sure you have everyone covered? I had them. I could see it in their faces. Doubt. The smallest seed, but doubt nonetheless. What do you really want, Harper? Christine asked quietly. I want my family back. The real one. Brenda and Michael, innocent and whole. And I want my daughter to have a choice. To stay in this life if she wants, or leave it without consequences. That's all. Impossible. Then we have nothing more to discuss. I stood up, moved toward the door. Wait. Victoria's voice stopped me. Mom, what if there was a way? What if I could get out and we could all start over? I turned back. Saw something in her face I hadn't seen in years. Hope. Real, genuine hope. Is there a way? I asked Christine. The woman's expression was unreadable. There might be, if Victoria helps us close one final case. A high-value client who needs relocation. After that, her debt is paid. She walks away clean. And me? You keep silent about everything you've learned. You return all files and any copies you've made. In exchange, you get visitation rights with your grandchildren and a monthly stipend to support your retirement. Plus the cabin. You keep that. It's off our books now anyway. It wasn't perfect. It left too many questions unanswered. Too many crimes unpunished. But it was a chance. For me and Victoria both. One condition, I said. I want to know what really happened to Jennifer Rawlings. The truth this time. Christine hesitated. Then, she's alive. Everything I told you was true. But she's not happy, Harper. Gerald broke her heart. She spent 30 years building a new life. But she never stopped loving him. When she heard he died, she tried to contact Victoria. We had to intervene. Where is she? That's not... Where? Christine sighed. Billings, Montana. She owns a bookstore under the name Margaret Winters. And before you ask, yes, you can contact her. But be prepared. She might not want to hear from you. I had what I came for. Truth. Messy, complicated, painful truth. But truth, nonetheless. Fine. I accept your terms. Victoria does this one final job, then she's out. I get my grandchildren back. And we all pretend Gerald was just an accountant who died too young. Christine extended her hand. I shook it, sealing a deal with criminals. What else could I do? Sometimes survival means compromise. Sometimes you can't win. You can only choose which pieces to save from the wreckage. I chose my family. Broken and flawed as they were, I chose them. And as I walked out of that motel room, I knew exactly what I had to do next. 3 weeks later, I stood in Jennifer Rawlings's bookstore in Billings, Montana, pretending to browse the mystery section. She, Margaret Winters now, didn't recognize me. Why would she? I was just another elderly customer, harmless and invisible. But I recognized her immediately. I recognized her from the letters and later photographs in her file. The features were the same even after all these years. She moved between the shelves with easy familiarity, helping customers, recommending titles, laughing at someone's joke. She looked happy. Christine had been wrong about that. I waited until the store emptied at closing time, then approached the counter with a vintage mystery novel I'd selected. She rang it up with practiced efficiency. That's a good choice, she said. The Maltese Falcon never gets old. Neither do some secrets, I replied quietly. Her hand stilled on the register. Our eyes met. Recognition dawned slowly, then horror. You're Harper Sullivan. I am. Can we talk? Please. Just 5 minutes. She should have refused, should have called security, had me removed. Instead, she locked the front door, flipped the sign to closed, and led me to a small office in the back. How did you find me? She asked, her voice tight. Christine Valdez told me, after I discovered what Gerald had been doing. You know, about the network. Not a question, a statement of fact. I know Gerald helped people disappear. I know you were one of them. I know he loved you, and you loved him. Jennifer, Margaret, sat down heavily, suddenly looking every one of her 72 years. I shouldn't have. Loved him, I mean. He was married. He made that clear from the start. But I was 25 and stupid, and thought love conquered everything. What happened? The real story. Not the sanitized version Christine gave me. She was silent for a long moment. Then, I was running from my ex-husband. Police officer, abusive, connected. I'd tried leaving 3 times. He found me every time. Beat me worse each time. The 4th time, I knew he'd kill me. Someone gave me Gerald's name. Said he could make me disappear. And he did. He did more than that. He saved my life. Gave me identity documents, money, a job lined up in Montana. Drove me here himself. Made sure I got settled safely. I fell in love with him during that drive. 12 hours in a car, talking about everything and nothing. He was kind, patient. He listened like I mattered. Her voice cracked. I handed her a tissue from the box on her desk. We had an affair. 3 months, stolen weekends, secret phone calls. He said he loved me but couldn't leave you. Said you'd been through too much, that you needed him. I was selfish enough to push anyway. To demand he choose. He chose me. He chose stability, safety. You represented everything he wanted to be. Normal, respectable, legitimate. I represented the criminal world he was trying to escape, so he ended it. Told me it was over, that I needed to move on, build the life he'd given me the chance to have. But you didn't want to. Margaret smiled sadly. I threw a tantrum. Threatened to expose him, to tell you everything, to destroy the network. Childish revenge fantasies. I never would have actually done it. I wasn't suicidal, but I said the words. And the network heard them. What did they do? They made it clear that if I caused problems, my ex-husband would receive an anonymous tip about my location. They could give me to him gift-wrapped, and there wouldn't be anything I could do about it. So I shut up, moved on, met a good man, got married, had children, built the life Gerald gave me. Did you ever contact him again? Once, when he got sick. I heard through the network. They keep track of everyone, past clients and facilitators both. I sent him a letter through the old channels. Never got a response. I like to think he read it before he died. I pulled an envelope from my purse. Old, yellowed, addressed to Jennifer Rawlings, care of a P.O. box that no longer existed. I'd found it in the basement, hidden in the back of Gerald's journal. He wrote you back. He just never sent it. Margaret took the envelope with shaking hands, opened it, read it with tears streaming down her face. I didn't ask what it said. That was between her and Gerald. When she finished, she folded the letter carefully and tucked it into her pocket. Why did you come here? Why give me this? Because I needed to understand. Gerald kept your letters, kept photographs, built an entire archive of women he'd helped disappear. I needed to know if he was a monster or a savior. You've answered that question. He was neither. He was just a man trying to help people and getting in over his head. The network started out noble, helping abuse victims, protecting whistleblowers. But it corrupted over time, became about money and power instead of protection. Gerald got trapped in it, same as everyone else. And now my daughter is trapped. Margaret nodded. I heard. I'm sorry. Christine contacted me last year, said she was looking for Victoria's mother. I should have warned you then, should have told you to run. But I was a coward, didn't want the network focusing on me again. It's not your fault. None of this is your fault. We sat in silence for a moment. Then Margaret asked, what will you do now? I'm going to get my daughter out, and then I'm going to make sure the network can never trap anyone else. How? I smiled. By doing what Gerald should have done 47 years ago. I'm going to tell the truth, just not the way anyone expects. Victoria called me 2 days after I returned from Montana. Mom, we need to talk. It's about the final job Christine mentioned. We met at a coffee shop, neutral territory. She looked exhausted, hollowed out by stress. The client is a former CIA analyst, she said quietly. He has information about illegal drone strikes. Information that could embarrass 3 different presidential administrations. He wants to disappear before he testifies to Congress. That sounds like something witness protection should handle. He doesn't trust the government, thinks they'll kill him before he can testify. The network offered an alternative, and you have to facilitate it. If I do this, I'm out. Clean break. No more obligations. Christine promised. I studied my daughter's face, saw desperation there, and fear. But also something else. Doubt. Do you believe her? I asked. I don't know. I want to. But every time I think I'm done, they find one more job. One more client who needs help. One more reason I can't walk away. Then don't do it. Mom, don't do it. Walk away now. Today. Take Brenda and Michael. Take Preston. And disappear. They'll find us. Not if we're smarter than they are. I leaned forward. I spent 3 weeks researching the network, tracking down former clients like Jennifer Rawlings. learning how they operate, and I found their weakness. What weakness? Documentation. Gerald wasn't the only one keeping records. Everyone in the network documents everything: proof of transactions, evidence of relocations, insurance against betrayal. It's distributed, encrypted, impossible to destroy completely, but it's also traceable. And I've found someone who can trace it. I slid a business card across the table. Linda Simmons, investigative journalist, Washington Post. Rebecca Simmons's daughter, Victoria whispered, recognizing the last name. One of Dad's clients. Rebecca disappeared in 1979. Linda has spent her entire adult life looking for answers about what happened to her mother. When I contacted her and explained what Gerald had been doing, she agreed to help. In exchange, I'll tell her everything I know about her mother's disappearance. That will expose the entire network. Exactly. Christine and her people can't threaten us if everything goes public. They'll be too busy protecting themselves from federal investigation. Victoria stared at the business card like it might bite her. This could destroy Dad's reputation, make him look like a criminal. He was a criminal, but he was also trying to help people. Linda will tell both sides of the story. Gerald will be remembered as complicated, not evil. That's the best we can hope for. And you think this will work? I think it's our only chance. The network survives through secrecy. We're going to take that away. My daughter was silent for a long moment. Then she picked up the business card, tucked it into her purse. When? She asked. Tomorrow. Linda has arranged a meeting with federal prosecutors. You'll give them everything you know about the network's operations. In exchange, you get immunity. Preston keeps his medical license. The children never learn the details. What about you? I'll be fine. I'm just the widow who discovered her husband's secrets. Not enough evidence to prosecute. Too sympathetic to target. They'll leave me alone. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. Why are you doing this? After everything I said to you, everything I did, because you're my daughter, and because Gerald would want me to protect you, even if it means destroying everything he built. She reached across the table, took my hand. The first kind physical contact we'd had in months. I'm sorry, Mom, for all of it. The things I said, the way I treated you. I was scared and angry and... I know. I forgive you. We sat there, holding hands across a coffee shop table, while the world moved around us unknowing. The exposé ran 6 weeks later. Front page of the Washington Post, above the fold. Underground network helped hundreds disappear. But at what cost? Linda Simmons had written a masterpiece of investigative journalism. She traced the network's history from its noble origins through its gradual corruption, named names, exposed operations, provided documentation that Gerald and others had kept as insurance. The story was complete, nuanced, devastating. Gerald was portrayed as a complicated figure, someone who'd started by helping abuse victims but eventually became complicit in helping criminals and corrupt officials escape justice. Not a monster, but not a hero either. Human. The FBI opened investigations. Christine Valdez disappeared, ironically using the same network she'd worked for. Ivan was arrested in Miami trying to flee to Russia. Others scattered, went to ground, tried to rebuild. Victoria testified to federal prosecutors, gave them everything. In exchange, she got immunity and kept her family intact. Preston never learned the full extent of what his wife had been doing. Brenda and Michael remained blissfully ignorant of their grandfather's legacy. The cabin at Thornwood Hollow was seized as evidence. I didn't fight it. Didn't want it anyway. The place held too many ghosts. 3 months after the exposé, I received a letter. No return address, postmarked from Canada. Harper, you did what I couldn't. Thank you for finishing what I started, for protecting Victoria, for giving those women's stories the ending they deserved. I'm sorry I left you with this burden. I spent 43 years trying to keep you safe from my mistakes, but in the end, you were stronger than I ever knew. All my love, Gerald impossible. Gerald was dead. I'd watched him die, attended his funeral, mourned him for months. But the handwriting was his. The phrasing was his. The signature was his. I sat at my kitchen table staring at that letter, understanding finally dawning. Gerald had faked his death. or tried to. Had arranged his own disappearance, used the very network he'd built to escape. But something had gone wrong. The cancer was real. The death was real. This letter had been written before. Insurance in case his plan succeeded. Delivered on a timer by someone he'd trusted. Even dead, my husband was still keeping secrets. I burned the letter. Didn't tell Victoria, didn't tell Linda Simmons, didn't tell anyone. Some secrets were meant to die with their keepers. 6 months after everything ended, Victoria brought Brenda and Michael to my apartment for Sunday dinner. We'd established a routine. Every week, family meal, no discussion of the past. Just grandmother, daughter, grandchildren, building something new from the rubble of what had been destroyed. "Grandma, tell us about Grandpa," Brenda asked over dessert. "What was he really like?" I looked at Victoria. She gave me the smallest nod. Permission. "Your grandfather," I said carefully, "was a complicated man. He made mistakes, big ones, but he also tried to help people. He loved your mother very much, and he loved you both, even though he never got to meet you." "Was he a good person?" Michael asked. The question children ask. The question that matters most. The question that has no simple answer. "He tried to be," I said finally. "That's all any of us can do. Try to be good, even when it's hard, even when we fail." Brenda seemed satisfied with that answer. Michael nodded seriously, then asked for more ice cream. After dinner, after the children had been tucked into bed in my spare room, Victoria and I sat on the balcony with wine. "Do you think Dad knew?" she asked. "How it would all end. I think he hoped we'd be strong enough to survive it. And we were. Barely. But we did. That counts for something." We sat in comfortable silence, watching the city lights. "Mom?" Victoria said finally. "Thank you. For not giving up on me. You're my daughter. I'll never give up on you." It wasn't forgiveness. Not complete. Not yet. Too much had happened. Too many betrayals. Too many lies. But it was a beginning. A foundation we could build on. Below us, the city moved through its evening rhythms. People living normal lives, unaware of the secrets that had been hidden in plain sight. The network was dismantled, but I knew others would rise to take its place. There would always be people who needed to disappear. Always be people willing to help them. For a price. But that wasn't my problem anymore. I was just Harper Sullivan. 69 years old, widow, mother, grandmother, survivor. I'd faced my husband's legacy, confronted my daughter's betrayal, and emerged on the other side intact. Scarred, certainly. Changed. Absolutely. But intact. And every Sunday, I had dinner with my family. That was enough. More than enough. It was everything. Now tell me, what would you have done if you were in my place? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to check out the video on your screen right now. I'm sure it will surprise you.